Okay, so the next animal I want to talk about are cows. There are three types of cows in the animal industry: dairy, beef, and veal cows. All three industries are intertwined based on what is most profitable for the animal industry. Many people nowadays would agree that killing a several week old or month old baby cow to create the so called delicacy known as veal is cruel and barbaric. Many people vaguely know about the crates the baby cows are kept in, or the fact that we try to keep their flesh pale and tender. But the veal industry is directly connected to the dairy industry. Making calves into veal is merely a method for them to maximize profit. Male cows are not typically as profitable to raise. A female cow can produce babies and milk and eventually be made into dog food or hamburger meat. A male cow can only be made into veal or raised for beef. If we pass legislation to outlaw veal production, the industry could still make plenty of profit by simply raising their male cows to be made into beef. Yet losing the ability to make a quick buck by turning a baby cow into veal would haunt them, and they would try to make the money back with some other unsavory method. This is similar to how when we make reforms for people, companies make unnecessary cutbacks to avoid short term losses, like not making more money in February of this year compared to February of last year. And the factory farming industry might try to make its money back by using some loophole or breaking one of our many animal welfare laws, which either doesn't get enforced or is too vague. But this doesn't mean we should be apathetic and content to do nothing. The meatpacking, slaughtering, and agriculture industries are corrupt and need to be fought at every turn. This is necessary for anyone who even slightly cares about the overall good of our society. They abuse their workers and their animals. The diseases, pollution, hormones, and antibiotics come from the meat industry are bad for humans all around. Cows are put in filthy conditions which breed disease, and they do this to maximize profit. Afterwards, farmers use antibiotics, even when they're not necessary. I will go into the conditions of the veal industry in this video, but discussing it further will require its own separate video. Most dairy cows are reared indoors, either in crowded areas or in small pens with only enough room to stand or lie down. The environment is completely controlled with artificial lights, temperature, and feed, calculated to maximize milk output: 16 hours of light, 8 hours of dark. Cows are forced to produce 10 times more milk than their bodies are supposed to produce naturally. They're hooked up to a milking machine. The machines cause injuries and give electric shocks to their udders. Overmilking leads to infections, which make the milk unsanitary. Cows have to be impregnated in order to make milk. This is done via artificial insemination. Once the cow gives birth, her calf is taken away. This obviously causes sadness, as you can hear both animals bellowing when the separation happens. The cow is milked twice or sometimes 3 times a day for 10 months. After 3 months, she's made pregnant again and is milked constantly until about 6 to 8 weeks before birth. Afterwards, the animal is impregnated again. Cows are made perpetually pregnant. The overmilking and perpetual pregnancy can only last about 3 to 5 years before the cow's body gives out. She's then slaughtered to be made into hamburger or dog food. In order to maximize milk production, cows are fed high energy foods like soybean, fish meal, brewing byproducts, and poultry manure, but their bodies are not meant to digest this. Cows are meant to digest grass. The cow produces milk faster than she can digest her food. Thus, her body ends up consuming its own muscle, causing her to start milking off her own back. Bovine growth hormone is used to maximize milk production for cows. Not only are the cows sore from daily injections, but the use of these hormones forces her body to work harder, further deteriorating her muscles and accelerating exhaustion. Artificial insemination used to be considered a new and unusual method. Now it's common practice. Additional practices are developed. In the 60s, the first calves were produced using embryos transferred from one cow to another. A hormone is used which allows a cow to produce more egg cells. After being artificially inseminated by a prize bull, the embryo can be removed from the womb and transferred to a cheaper surrogate by making incisions in their flanks. In the 70s, we gained the ability to freeze embryos, and now 150,000 embryo transplants are attempted each year. Perhaps genetic engineering and cloning will be the next step in further attempting to turn living, breathing animals into machines. Okay, so next we're going to talk about beef cows. Compared to other animals such as pigs and chickens, beef cows get to see the most time outside. They used to be able to roam and eat grass for 2 years before being moved to a feedlot. Now it's standard to only wait for 6 months. It's a common practice to cut out pieces of their flesh, cutting off pieces of their ears, or to brand them so that the farmers have an easier time identifying their property. Though a cow's hide is thicker than a human skin, the brand is held onto the cow's hide for several seconds, which burns their flesh and causes them pain. All of this is done without anesthesia. It's also common practice to cut off pieces of a cow's horns. This is done for identification purposes, and due to the sensitive nerve endings, this causes pain. The animals are also castrated. Methods of castration involve cutting open the scrotum and tearing the cord in between the testicles, or tying a cow's scrotum with a rubber band and waiting several weeks for the testicles to rot and fall off. All of these things are done with no painkiller. They live in cramped, dusty holding pens filled with their own feces and urine, which creates the gas known as ammonia. Their movement isn't as heavily restricted as other animals, but the areas are still cramped, and the cows experience stress and boredom from the unchanging environment. Calves separated from their mother are either made into veal or they become beef and dairy cows. The males become veal or beef cows. The females become dairy cows. Calves made into beef or dairy don't get to drink any milk, as the milk is taken to be used by humans. They're fed a liquid substitute instead. This substitute is often lacking in nutrients, so the cows become unhealthy. Cows are often slaughtered improperly, and the process is painful. They're supposed to be knocked unconscious before being killed. So many workers, up to 100%, quit their jobs every year at slaughterhouses and factory farms, so workers are new and inexperienced. In addition, workers are in a rush to stay on schedule and have to slaughter an average of 250 cows per hour. Workers often don't stun the animals properly, and the cows struggle while being hung upside down. Their throats are cut. It's also a large possibility that even when the animals are stunned properly before being slaughtered, that they're merely paralyzed and not actually being knocked unconscious, so they can still feel pain. Okay, so next we're going to talk about veal calves. Veal calves live in small wooden crates. Some are chained. They can't even turn around or stretch their legs. The floors of their stalls are slated, which causes joint and leg pain. They never get to see the sun, touch the earth, or eat grass. They often become too sick and crippled to walk. 10% die from confinement. These cows are either killed only a few days after being born, or after they are 16 weeks old. The ones killed after only a few days are made into low-grade veal for frozen dinners. What this proves is that veal isn't actually some sort of delicacy or a symbol of status. It's just a cheap way for the farm industry to save a little extra money. And we often use euphemisms to help us forget where our meat came from, like beef instead of cow or pork instead of pig. With this type of meat, we use bougie words like veal as a euphemism instead of just calling it what it is, tortured baby cow. We purposely don't allow veal calves to move so that their flesh will be soft. Veal calves are separated from their mother, are given a liquid milk substitute, and they're purposefully not fed any iron so that their meat becomes more tender and pale. This doesn't actually make the meat taste any better once it's cooked. This is just done so that people who eat it can feel more fancy. The veal calves are not given any water either. The calves crave iron so much that they lick the metal bars of their stalls, even when those metal bars are covered in their own urine.